Alistair, it's really nice to see you here in Amsterdam. The client debate we're holding here with more than 150 people, just amazing. And you were talking about Pillar 1, and I could see that it piqued a lot of people's interest. Tell me a bit more about Pillar 1.
So I think when we talk about Pillar 1, we need to think about two separate pieces there, two things going on. So we've got a discussion about digital taxes. The US doesn't like digital taxes. Other countries that have introduced them recognize that they're problematic. We want a way to make those taxes go away. What is that way? That's Amount A. This is a big change in the way that profits are allocated, but limited to a relatively small number of groups. So that's one piece. And then we have a second piece, which is about, can we make transfer pricing rules simpler? It's Amount B. And we've got a Pillar 1 that brings these both together. We've got something that, certain countries like, certain countries don't. Certain businesses like, certain businesses don't. We've got another piece that's about making transfer pricing kind of simpler, easier, that lots of people can buy into. Pillar 1 brings those together as a kind of package. It's an attempt to buy in different people into something that, gives a little bit to everyone and takes a little bit away from something.
That's really interesting. And let's compare that to Pillar 2, because Pillar 2 is quite far down the track. Pillar 1 perhaps isn't as far down the track. From your perspective, what's the prognosis for Pillar 1?
Yeah, so that's right. So the OECD manages to get their Pillar 2 rules out, now almost 18 months ago, and we're on to country implementation. And that's not where Pillar 1 is. It's been a much more difficult process. And that's because in some ways it was a more difficult problem, because the Pillar 2 rules were something that lots of people have thought about for a long time, and the Pillar 1 rules, particularly around Amount A, were new, they were different. And they require changes to treaties, which wasn't something that's required for Pillar 2. And so I think that is something that people are really looking at in the Amount A space, is saying, well, treaty change is difficult, particularly in countries like the US. Is there a viable path forward? The thing that I think is worth emphasizing is we're not quite there yet, because actually the OECD hasn't yet been able to finalize what the Amount A rules will look like. So we're really looking there to the middle of the year. Can they get to a multilateral convention that can be implemented? And then the question is, okay, are countries going to be able to ratify that convention until what timetable? Amount B, simplification of transfer pricing rules, is just a bit simpler. You can change the transfer pricing guidelines, it's relatively straightforward, and that is just an easier implementation vehicle, which means that could potentially move to slightly a different track and at a greater speed.
Oh, that's interesting. So you could see parts of Pillar 1 perhaps moving a little faster than other parts. So with that in mind then, when you're talking to people here, they're asking about that. Generally, what's your advice to them?
So I think it depends who you are. So if you're a digital business, or if you're a large, highly profitable business, you want to be following Amount A, you want to understand where that is. And if we get to the middle of the year and the rules come out, you want to look at those and think about the potential impact from you. Even recognizing that there are some challenges with the potential implementation of that going forward. Digital businesses, they need to think about DSTs. Amount A, when that comes out, if that doesn't necessarily progress at the speed that some people are hoping, we're looking around the world and saying, well, our country's going to more DSTs. The piece around Amount B is different. That's a different set of companies that are potentially impacted. And so there's some big questions around the scope of those rules, but I think kind of more broadly, most companies, probably with the exception of the financial services sector, should be looking at those rules from out in the middle of the year. I think what are the implications for me? And actually, it may well be that there's some real benefits each in scope of those rules. So that would definitely be something that would be worth it.
I suppose it could, unlike most things, actually reduce controversy as well.
That is the goal, right?
Yeah.
And I think for transfer pricing folk, we spend a lot of time doing the same thing over and over again and defending the same thing over and over again. And everyone says, well, wouldn't this be so much more simpler if we just agreed a number?
Yeah.
And, transfer pricing has a tendency to say, oh, that's very difficult. Can't quite do that. But what if we could just agree?
What if we could?
And what if countries could agree on a number? That's the goal at the number.
Well, Alistair, this is fascinating. This is fascinating and really sound advice to keep our eyes on this and understand there's potentially two pieces moving forward, maybe at different times. So no wonder people are asking you questions about this. This has been fantastic. Thank you, Alistair.
Absolutely.